The human stood still, the hot wind brushing against his clothes, sand swirling around his boots. His fingers held tightly to the flask on his belt. It was light, almost empty, but it was all he had. Every drop inside was life itself. His eyes moved back to the alien girl. Her face was pale, her lips cracked from dryness. She trembled under the weight of her pets, holding them close as if her arms alone could protect them. The creatures gave weak cries, their small chests rising and falling slowly. One of them stopped moving for a moment, and the girl shook it gently, panic flooding her eyes until it breathed again. The human's throat burned with his own thirst. He had been walking under the sun since morning, and the desert had taken its price. His tongue was dry, and his muscles ached. If he drank now, he might last another day. If he gave his water away, he would not. The girl met his gaze, her eyes full of fear and pleading. She did not say more words. She was too weak. Yet her silence spoke louder than cries. She was begging without pride, without hope, just raw desperation. The human took a slow breath. In his mind, a battle raged. Survival against compassion. Logic against heart. He remembered the warnings. Never waste kindness in this cruel world. Never give what you cannot replace. And yet, he knelt down in front of her. Dust rose as his knee touched the ground. He pulled the flask free from his belt, his hand trembling slightly. The girl gasped softly, hope sparking in her eyes for the first time. He unscrewed the lid. The smell of water, faint but real, reached the girl's nose. Her pets stirred, sensing it too, their weak bodies twitching toward the sound. The human tilted the flask slowly. Clear drops of water glistened in the sun before falling onto the lips of the first creature. The little pet shivered, licking greedily, its throat moving as life returned to it. The girl's eyes widened, tears welling up as she watched. He gave the second creature a sip too. Its eyes opened faintly, blinking at the light, and it made a weak sound that almost sounded like joy. The flask was nearly empty now. Only a few drops remained at the bottom. The human stared at it for a long moment. His body screamed for him to drink, to save himself. But he looked at the girl again. She was crying silently, her tears cutting lines through the dust on her face. Not tears of sadness, but of disbelief. No one else had stopped. No one else had cared. Yet this human, a stranger, had given away his life for her pets. He closed the flask and handed it to her. "For them," he said, his voice low, rough from thirst. The girl clutched it with shaking hands. Her heart pounded. She wanted to speak, to ask why, but the words would not come. The human swayed slightly, his vision blurring. His lips cracked into a faint smile before he turned his eyes to the horizon. The choice was made.
The desert sun showed no mercy. Heat shimmered across the sand, pressing down on everything alive. The human's skin burned, his lips cracked deeper, and his legs felt heavy as stone. Yet he did not take back the flask. He had given it to the alien girl, and that choice could not be undone. The girl stared at him in disbelief. In her world, water was treasure. Even friends would not share it, not when it meant their own survival. But this human, someone she did not even know, had given his last drops to her weak pets. She looked down at them. Already, they were moving better, their breathing stronger, their small tongues wet again. Life was slowly returning. Her heart twisted with a strange feeling. Gratitude. Fear. And something more, something she could not yet name. The human swayed on his feet. His vision blurred, the horizon bending and splitting into shapes that weren't real. Every step forward was heavier than the last. His body screamed for water, but the flask in the girl's hands was no longer his. He had chosen. The girl's voice trembled. Why would you do this? She could not understand. Aliens, her own kind, had walked past her without even slowing down. They left her pets to die in the dust. But this man, this human, had given everything. The human stopped walking and looked back at her. His eyes were tired, but they held a steady fire. Because they needed it more, he whispered. His voice was rough, each word cutting into his dry throat. The girl's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him he was foolish. But no words came. Instead, she watched as he stumbled, his knees buckling for a moment before he forced himself upright again. Her pets crawled into her lap, licking her hands weakly. She held them close, but her eyes never left the man. Each step he took felt like a silent scream inside her heart. If he kept walking like this, he would not survive the desert. The truth struck her like lightning. His sacrifice meant her pets would live, but he might die in their place. The girl's breath quickened. She had never cared for a human before. They were strangers, outsiders, even enemies in some stories. But now, watching him collapse slowly under the same sun she suffered beneath, she felt fear. Not fear of him, but fear of losing him. The human finally sank to one knee, the weight of the desert too much. He pressed his hand into the sand, steadying himself, but his body shook. His lips parted, but no words came this time. Only silence. The girl rushed forward, her pets clinging to her arms. She knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she touched his shoulder. His skin was burning hot, his breath shallow. She could not let him die. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "You saved them, now I will save you." And in that moment, the alien girl made her own choice.
The human lay half-conscious on the burning sand. His chest rose and fell slowly, each breath sharp and shallow. The alien girl held his shoulder, panic surging inside her heart. She had never seen a human this close, never touched one before. His skin was rough, his body strong, but now he looked fragile, broken under the desert sun. Her pets clung weakly to her lap, alive because of him. She looked at them, then at the man, and her heart twisted painfully. He had given away his life for creatures that weren't even his. No one in her people would ever do such a thing. Fear crawled through her. What if he died right here? She would be left alone again. But this time the thought hurt more than before. She had lost many things in her short life. Comfort, home, kindness. But she did not want to lose this human too. The desert wind howled, carrying sand across the dunes. The girl looked around, searching desperately. There had to be water somewhere, some way to save him. But the horizon stretched empty, cruel and endless. She remembered the faces of the travelers who had ignored her earlier. If she begged them again, would they help? Her heart told her no. They would laugh at her, maybe even steal what little she had left. But the human, he had not laughed. He had given. The girl placed her hand over his chest, feeling the faint beat of his heart. It was weak but steady, like a drum fading into silence. Her throat tightened, and tears threatened to fall. She whispered, "Don't leave me, not after what you did." Her pets whimpered softly, as if they too feared the loss of their savior. Their small bodies pressed against his arm, sensing the bond that had been created. For the first time in her life, the girl felt powerless. She had always fought to survive, clawed her way through hunger and thirst. But now, it wasn't just her life at stake. It was his. She looked at the flask in her hands. Only a few drops remained, not enough for both of them. She could give it to him, but what if it wasn't enough to wake him? What if it was wasted? Her hands trembled with the weight of the choice. She pressed the flask to his lips. Slowly, carefully, she let the last drops touch his mouth. His throat moved weakly, swallowing what little she gave. His eyes flickered, barely opening, and for a moment, he looked at her. In that broken stare, she saw something: trust. The girl gasped, her fear burning deeper. He trusted her now, as he had trusted her to care for his sacrifice. That trust was heavier than chains. She could not fail him. She tightened her arms around her pets and whispered fiercely, "I will find a way, I promise." And then she rose, pulling him with her, her legs trembling under the weight. She was only one girl, weak and thirsty, but she would not let the human die. Not after he had given her hope. The alien girl struggled under the blazing sun, her arms wrapped tightly around the faint human. His body was heavy, his head resting weakly against her shoulder. Each step sank into the burning sand, pulling her down as if the desert itself wanted to bury them both. Her pets walked at her feet, still weak but alive. They whimpered softly, their ears drooping, their eyes full of worry as they looked at the human who had saved them. The girl felt her strength fading with every step, but the memory of his sacrifice pushed her forward. "Stay with me," she whispered, her voice raw and broken. "You gave them life. Now I will give you yours." The desert gave no answer. It only roared with hot wind, carrying waves of sand across the horizon. The girl's throat burned like fire, her lips split with dryness. Her body begged her to stop, to fall into the sand and let the end come. But her heart refused. She had promised him, and a promise to someone who gave everything could not be broken. She spotted a group of travelers in the distance, riding strange hover machines across the dunes. Hope lit in her chest, and she staggered toward them, shouting with what little voice she had left. "Please, help us. He will die." The travelers slowed, their machines humming in the dry air. For a moment she thought they might save them. But then the riders laughed. Their eyes looked at her pets, at the weak human, and then at her. One spat into the sand. "Not worth it," one of them sneered. "Let the fool die." They turned away, engines roaring as they vanished into the horizon. The girl fell to her knees, tears burning her dust-covered face. Rage and despair twisted inside her chest. How could they not care? How could they walk away from the one person who had cared for her? Her pets nuzzled against her legs, whimpering. She wiped her face with shaking hands, forcing herself to stand again. She looked down at the unconscious human. His skin was pale, his breath shallow. He had given away his last chance at life, and now it was her turn to do the same. "No one will help us," she whispered, "so I will do it myself." With trembling arms, she pulled him back onto her shoulder and pushed forward again. The dunes stretched endlessly, but she refused to stop. Each step was agony, but she imagined water ahead, a spring, anything that could save him. Hours passed. Her legs shook, her vision blurred, and her body screamed to give up. Yet she held on, guided by something new inside her, faith. Faith that she could not let his sacrifice end here. Then, as the sun began to sink low, painting the desert sky in red and gold, she saw it, a glimmer in the distance, a shimmer of green among the dunes. Her heart leapt. Could it be real? She staggered toward it, every ounce of her will burning with a single thought. She would not let him die. The alien girl dragged her tired body over the last dune, her arms shaking as she carried the faint human. Her heart pounded wildly. She had seen something, a shimmer of green, a patch of life in the endless desert. For hours she had chased mirages, false visions born from heat. But this looked different. Her pets barked weakly, their ears perking up. They smelled something fresh. The girl's breath caught in her throat. Could it be real this time? She stumbled forward, her knees nearly giving out. Then she saw it clearly. A spring hidden between the rocks. Clear water flowed into a small pool, surrounded by thin grass and wild flowers that somehow clung to life. Tears filled her eyes. It was real. Salvation was real. With the last of her strength, she lowered the human gently near the water's edge. His face was pale, lips cracked, his chest rising only slightly. She dipped her hands into the pool, scooping water and pressing it to his lips. "Please," she whispered. "Drink. Come back to me." First, nothing happened. The water slid down his throat, but he did not stir. Panic gripped her heart. She tried again, cradling his head in her lap, giving him more water. Her tears dripped into the pool, mixing with the ripples. Then a soft sound, a breath stronger than before. The human's chest rose deeper, his eyes twitching under closed lids. Slowly, painfully, his eyes opened. The girl gasped, her tears falling freely now. "You're alive!" Her voice broke, but it carried joy. The human blinked, his vision cloudy, but he saw her face above him. For a moment, He looked confused. Then his lips curved into the faintest smile. You found water. The girl nodded quickly, brushing her hand against his cheek. Yes, you gave your water to them, so I gave mine to you. Her pets crawled close, their tiny paws resting on the human's arm as if thanking him. The human let out a weak chuckle, though it ended in a cough. He sat up slowly, drinking more from her cupped hands until strength began to return to his body. The girl couldn't stop staring at him. Her heart raced in a way she had never felt before. She had been saved many times by luck, by chance, but never by someone else's choice. This human had risked his life for her pets, and she had almost lost him because of it. Now, seeing him alive again, she realized something terrifying. The fear that had gripped her in the desert wasn't just about losing a savior. It was about losing him. She pressed her hand against her chest, trying to calm the storm inside. She didn't understand these feelings completely, but she knew one thing. She could never let him walk away from her life. The human, still weak, leaned against the rock, looking at the girl and her pets. His voice was soft but certain. We made it. The girl smiled through her tears, nodding firmly. Yes, because of you. But deep inside, she knew the truth. They survived. Because of each other. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the desert sky with deep orange and purple. The once merciless dunes now glowed softly, as if the desert itself had quieted after testing them. Beside the small spring, the human rested against a rock, his body weak but alive. The alien girl sat close, her pets curled between them, their eyes bright again with life. For the first time since their meeting, silence felt safe. Not the silence of despair, but of peace. The girl watched the human, her heart still heavy with the memory of almost losing him. She remembered how he had fallen, how his lips had gone pale, how she thought he would never wake again. That fear lingered inside her, sharper than any pain she had known. Her pets stirred and licked the man's hand, their small tails wagging weakly. The human chuckled softly, his voice hoarse but warm. He lifted one hand, patting their heads gently. Looks like they'll live, he said. The girl's throat tightened. She nodded, her eyes shining. Because of you, they would have died without your water. The human looked at her then, his tired gaze steady. I almost died because of it. Her chest ached. She lowered her head, ashamed. I know. And I thought I would lose you. That fear, it was worse than the desert itself. The human tilted his head, studying her. There was no anger in his eyes, no regret, only quiet strength. But you didn't lose me. You saved me instead. His words struck deep, breaking the last of her doubt. Tears welled in her eyes, but she smiled through them. She reached out, taking his hand gently. Her touch was soft, careful, almost afraid. But she didn't pull away. The desert wind carried the sound of running water from the spring, a promise of survival. Yet in that moment, the girl realized something far greater had been given. Trust, a bond formed not from blood or race, but from sacrifice. She whispered, her voice trembling but sure. I will not leave you, not now, not ever. The human looked at her, surprised, but then his lips curved into a faint smile. He squeezed her hand back, weak yet certain. Then we face whatever comes, together. Her pets chirped happily, as if agreeing. They nuzzled against both of them, binding the strange group tighter. Human and alien, once strangers in a hostile desert, now united by something stronger than survival. Night began to fall, stars scattering across the sky like diamonds. The girl leaned closer to the human, resting her head against his shoulder. The fear that had haunted her was gone. In its place was warmth, safety, and a bond she knew would never break. The desert had tried to take everything from them. Instead, it had given them each other. And from that day forward, the alien girl and her pets walked beside the human, not out of need but out of choice, out of trust, out of something that would only grow stronger with time. The desert had taken water, but it had given them life. Together, the desert was endless, a sea of burning sand stretching in every direction. The sun hung heavy in the sky, beating down without mercy. In the middle of that wasteland, a young alien girl stumbled forward. Her steps were weak, her throat dry, and her eyes filled with fear. Beside her were two small creatures, her pets. They were furry, with long ears and bright eyes that once shined with life. Now those eyes were dull. Their tongues hung out, their breaths shallow. Every step was a struggle. The girl carried them in her arms when they collapsed, but even her strength was failing. She looked around, but there was no help. No one stopped for her. Travelers from other races passed at a distance, riding machines across the dunes. They saw her, but they turned their eyes away. To them, she was just another poor soul in the desert, not worth saving. Her heart pounded faster with panic. She whispered to her pets, "Hold on. Please, just a little longer." But her voice trembled. She knew they would not last. The last drop of water in her small flask was gone hours ago. Now her only hope was a miracle. And then she saw him, a human. He walked alone, dressed in dusty clothes, his face covered with a scarf against the sand. His steps were slow but steady, as if he had walked deserts before. On his belt, a small flask of water glimmered in the sun. The girl's eyes locked onto it, her hope rising and falling at the same time. She wanted to run to him, to beg, but fear held her back. Humans were outsiders in her world. Stories said they were dangerous, selfish, and cold. Yet, in that moment, her pride and her fear clashed with her desperation. Her pets whimpered weakly, their bodies twitching. She could not watch them die. The human noticed her. His eyes narrowed as he approached, scanning the girl, her condition, and the dying creatures at her side. He stopped just a few steps away. For a moment, the desert was silent. Only the sound of the hot wind filled the air. The girl clutched her pets tighter. She wanted to speak, but her voice cracked. "Water, please." The words escaped her lips in a whisper. The human reached for his flask. His hand tightened around it. He looked at the girl, then at her pets. A shadow crossed his face. That flask was his last water. Without it, he would not survive the desert. Giving it away meant choosing death for himself. Yet he did not look away. He did not turn his back like the others. Instead, he stepped closer, his gaze steady, his mind caught in a storm of choice. The girl's breath caught in her chest. Would he walk away, or would he give the one thing he could not afford to lose? The desert held its breath, waiting for his decision.